Marvel Comics 1996. Here's the top 10 most valuable books of the year based on the Overstreet annual price guide prices for near mint raw copies. We've got some really cool books on the list here. Let's dive right in. Ranking 10th most valuable of the year is Wolverine Number 100. This is the hologram cover edition, very popular, a milestone issue. The Death of Genesis. We've also got Elektra appearing in this issue. Cover and art by Adam Kubert, hot artist at that time. There is a 9.9 CGC copy of this book. Print run estimated to be quite low on this one. This book ranks 10th most valuable of 1996 and 181 most valuable of the 1990s for Marvel Comics. There's now 449 copies graded on the CGC census, and 313 of them are grading 9.6 or higher. Heritage Auctions has sold 10 copies since the year 2000. In the Overstreet price guide, we can see no growth at all in low grades, which is to be expected because this is a fairly cheap book, but it had a little bump up. This is now a $16 book in the price guide for 9.2 raw copies, which is near mint minus. On the CGC census, we find that there is a 9.9 and 155 9.8. And keep in mind, of course, there is also a regular non-hologram cover that's also out there, but not as highly collected. Ranking number 9 of the year is X-Men 50, and this is the silver cover. Now, the CGC doesn't call any of the books silver. They call it the Speckle Foil edition. So I'm assuming this is the same book that they're referring to when we matched them up. So there's a bunch of different variants of number 50. So we're going to look at the Speckle Foil edition here. We have a cameo from Onslaught. This is a wraparound cover. Andy Kubert and Cam Smith cover art. This is one of 4 covers. There are 2 9.9 CGC copies of this book. Print run estimated to be quite small, again, which is why it's valuable. Ranking 9th of the year, 168th of the decade, 174 copies graded, 160 of them are 9.6 or higher. Heritage has only sold 5 copies. In the Overstreet price guide, no movement at all in low grades, and even stalled in the last year in high grades at $18. On the census, you can see the Speckle Foil version is the one with the most copies graded, 2 9.9s and 128 9.8. Number 8 of the year is Amazing Spider-Man 410. Now, this book features the first appearance of Spider Carnage. We've got Mark Bagley art. This is a really cool cover art here. Book ranks 8th of the year and 100th of the decade. Print run estimated at 216,000 copies on this. There are 520 copies graded, 413 high-grade copies, 15 sold at Heritage. In the Overstreet price guide, no movement at all in any grade except the top grade, just a little slight bump, now a $30 book. On the census, there are 284 9.8s and 127 9.6s. That brings us to number 7 on our list, and this is X-Men 54. This is the special collector's edition variant of this book. Onslaught is revealed as Professor X. We have a prismatic hologram cover. Print run estimated to be only 7,500 copies, and that came with a certificate of authenticity. It ranks 7th of the year and 56th of the decade. On the census, we have 170 copies, 140 high grade, none sold at Heritage. In the Overstreet price guide, again, no movement in low grades. The book is currently sitting at $45 for a 9.2. If you want to see what the CGC higher graded copies sell for, check out eBay sold listings or also the website gpanalysis.com. On the census, we can see this book has 1 9.9 and 79 9.8s. And now we get to another X-Men issue. This is number 50, but this time it's the gold edition variant. And print run estimated only 4,500 copies made of this key anniversary issue. It is the gold variant. There is a 9.9 of this book. It ranks 6th of the year and 48th of the decade. There are 117 copies graded, 91 high grade, none sold at Heritage. In the Overstreet price guide, no movement at all in any grades. It's been stalled at $50 for a number of years now. On the census, there is 9.9 and 65 9.8. And now we get to number 5, and this one's quite interesting, which we'll see here in a moment. We have Amazing Spider-Man 408. Now, this one's a little tricky. There's a bunch of variant covers. One of the versions came in a poly bag, and then another version of the same book didn't come in a poly bag. The poly bag version features a cassette tape, which is really cool, but we're going to talk about the version that doesn't. Okay. So what you have to notice is whether there's a cover price on the book or not. Okay. So the print run is estimated at only 5,000 copies, another rare book. And I also wanted to mention that sometimes the CGC census doesn't properly separate these variant covers. So the numbers I'm going to use might not be truly accurate for this particular version. So we have 106 copies graded, 63 high grade. Heritage has sold 1 of the non-bagged version. And here we compare the two. So the comic only version, you can see, actually had a big drop. The Overstreet price guide did a market correction in 2021. After being an $85 book for the last 6 years, it dropped it way down to $50. Definitely price resistance on this book. And then again, on the census, it's hard to really tell where they've grouped this book in. We'll come back to this book for more information in a bit. Next on our list, number 4 is Sensational Spiderman #1. And this ranks high on the list also because this came polybagged with the same cassette tape. And you'll note that there are 4 different Spider-Man comics that came out at this time with this polybag and the Saturday morning cartoon sampler cassette, which also includes a song by the Ramones. Okay, so we have 4 different comics polybag, but this one is valuable. It is the #1 of Sensational Spider-Man. Print run estimated again in the polybag to be only 5,000 copies. It ranks 4th of the year and 42nd of the decade. 72 copies graded, 49 high grade. Heritage has sold none. In the Overstreet price guide, this book has been just slowly sneaking up. It's now a $55 book. On the census, again, a little bit tough to tell which one is which, but they do list that on the variant cover, the poly bag has been removed and there's 72 copies graded, including 25 9.8. So now we get up to number 3. And just to confuse things more, we have another version of Amazing Spider-Man 408, but this is now the newsstand white cover version. So it has the barcode and the price on this one. Okay, so this book can be mistaken with the version that came in the poly bag, but keep in mind, one has a price and one doesn't. Print run estimated this one could be about 50,000, ranks 3rd of the year and 31st of the decade. There are 106 copies graded, 63 high grade. Heritage has sold 1 copy. And in the Overstreet price guide, again, a bit of a market correction, no change at all in low grades, but high grade has been dropped to $75. And now we get to number 2. This is a real unique book on our list. Wolverine 102.5. Now, Wizard Magazine used to do promotions of comics in the 1990s for mail-away comics. And they had their own freebie promo inserts sometimes also in their polybagged versions of the Wizard Magazine. So there's actually 2 versions of this particular comic, and it's hard to tell which one is which. And even the Overstreet price guide only lists 1 version, so we're using their price. So the print run estimated at 10,000 copies. This is number 2 of the year, 17th of the decade. Only 6 copies graded on the CGC, no high grade, none sold at Heritage. But it gets a little bit complicated because Overstreet says there's only 1 version, but the CGC has clearly made it that there's 2 versions. So there's a regular one that's 128 copies graded with 9.8s, but then they also say there's a Wizard Authentic Edition. So that version it says a holographic logo. So all the copies I've seen for sale, I presume, are not the holographic logo, making this holographic version extremely rare, that there's only 6 on the census, and the highest is a 9.2. So look for that one specifically. You're looking for a holographic logo. This book could be worth a fortune. There are no copies listed on eBay at all, and barely any copies on the census. That brings us to the #1 comic of the year. We've already actually seen it in a sense at #5, but we see it again because this time it's the polybagged version that comes with the cassette tape. And what's interesting, the Overstreet price guide says that this only has top value if it's still polybagged with the cassette. And yet, if you send copies into CGC to get graded, of course, they're going to not accept the bag and the cassette. So we have a bit of a dilemma with this book on which way is it going to hold its value best, being just polybagged raw or getting graded and finding a high grade copy of this. We're back to this white cover version. Okay, so this is a very complicated comic to collect, and it's the #1 comic of the year. It ranks 10th of the decade with the tape and 45th of the decade, the comic only. Print run estimated at 5,000 copies for each version. And keep in mind, those two versions are not even the same comic. One, again, has a price tag, and the other one doesn't. Bit confusing. 106 copies graded by CGC, 63 high grade, 1 by Heritage. And again, here you can compare the bagged with tape version in the Overstreet price guide, and here's the comic only version, which never was polybagged. And so you can see that this is now a $180 book, which ranks it #1 of the year. So there you go. Now what we're going to do is we're going to compare all these books on the CGC census, see which ones are rare, which ones are got the most demand from dealers and speculators. Highest on our list is actually Amazing Spider-Man 410. This is just a regular issue, but it has an important first appearance. So it has 520 copies graded with 284 9.8s, very high on the list. After that, we have the Wolverine 100 hologram cover. But at the low end, we have the really rare Wolverine 102.5 holographic logo version, and then also the Sensational Spider-Man variant cover from the polybag, but the copies graded have the polybag removed. So hopefully you kept all of this information straight. And this is where the future of comics is going. It's going to get more and more complicated with a ton of variants and different versions of books, different covers, different printings. But that's the fun of collecting modern comics, right? We do this series every week, so we thank you for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, and we'll do another year next week. Thank you.